Hey everybody, it's Alex and Spencer again with Debt Collection 101 on Arbeit. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for coming back.
Yep. So, what
we got an interesting topic today. Very interesting topic.
Collection agency culture.
Yes.
I think this is
the key.
And it's all of the previous videos I feel like that we've done
have touched on this.
Have touched on a piece
Very
of
good
it.
point,
So
Alex.
it's like this is almost like going to be a summary of all of that put together and how it affects the culture, overall culture of your agency. But
let's start with.
Yeah. Well, last week
last week on
Arbeit we had Kim and Brian.
Mm-hmm.
Kim is the president of the North Carolina Collectors Association,
mm-hmm.
and she has an agency in North Carolina, and she was talking about motivating collectors. And I think one of the things that's best about her agency is the culture that they have there,
mm-hmm.
and part of that comes from the motivation style.
Yeah, and if you watched the video, and even if you didn't, you should. She does a lot of cool things internally in her office that get her employees excited.
So before we get ahead of ourselves, let's go back a little bit to what is business culture? What is business culture? So why don't you let everybody know what you think?
Okay, then I think business culture is.
Yeah.
What I would define as, and I'm sure there's an actual definition, but what I would define as business culture is the way you feel when you walk into a place, right? If you walk into Arbeit software, you will get a certain feeling, right? Mm-hmm. Versus if you walk into M&T Bank.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. So business culture essentially is the overall environment, how people interact with each other.
Yeah, how people interact with each other. Did you Google
the tone?
this?
No, the tone that you have with everybody. Yeah.
You didn't go home and Google what is company culture?
Yep.
Okay.
Just it's all up here.
Okay.
But, so yeah, that's what business culture is, and I think a lot of people don't realize that you actually need to work on business culture.
Yeah, it doesn't just come.
think because in a lot of smaller companies they don't care about it, they don't spend any time on it because they don't have the resources maybe, or
So if you don't work on it, what usually results is a bad culture.
Yes. Yeah.
If you're not focused on it, odds are good it's a bad culture.
Right. So with that being said, for a collection agency in particular, a bad culture can be extremely detrimental.
Yep.
Because the culture it's not only your internal interactions with each other, but
it's how you set a standard as to what's okay.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
What you allow your employees to do.
Right. So if your internal culture is toxic, you can only imagine what that is
right through on the phone.
Yeah. So what I guess are some tips that we can give to people? I mean, so we'll go back a step here before we get into the tips. So bad culture leads to compliance issues.
Always, hands down.
Right? I mean, if you're in a toxic environment, people are aggravated and constantly demoralizing each other or demeaning. They're gonna do the same with the consumers.
Yeah.
Because if you do that to them, if you're the boss and you're doing it to them, creating that culture, they're gonna do it to the consumers because they feel like they can.
Yeah.
Because you do it, it's acceptable.
Yeah.
So, I guess. So, what are some big things that an agency can say, I want to work on my culture? What can we work on?
So, there's two pieces of advice I have. The number one is don't be afraid to terminate bad employees, right? Mm-hmm. One bad apple does spoil the bunch.
Right, and bad for not in a sense of production.
No, bad in the sense that there's people who are just negative and miserable and they're bullies and they create a toxic environment.
And I think I've heard this before in the collection agencies, and they feel like if you're the top collector, you can do whatever you want.
Yeah, no.
That is, even if you're top, because let's say your top collector is a bad apple. They're constantly negative, degrading, blah, 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 and you have 20 other collectors.
Yeah, if you get them away, your 20 other collectors rise.
Those 19 other collectors, while he's there, might be collecting 20% less than they actually could be because they're in terrible moods all the time and not motivated. Yeah. Or maybe those 19 other collectors are generating 5 complaints that they wouldn't have if this culture was different,
Yeah.
So you got to think about the big picture, not just, they're my best collector, I'm just going to take everything from them, essentially. Because I think that happens, especially at smaller agencies. That would be top tip.
Mm-hmm.
Get rid of bad apples. Don't be afraid to, even if they're a bad collector, because overall, it's going to equal out in the long run.
Yep.
Because your other collectors
are better off getting. Yeah, you can't let that spread.
Mm-hmm. Because they will. It's like they have this toxic aura of bad GG.
Bad. I knew you were going to pull out the GG.
That spreads across the office. So Another tip that I think is good is from the top down. Culture starts from the top down, right? Mm-hmm. So it starts with the owner of the company, and it goes down to management and down to employees and so on if you're a huge agency. But a lot of the small businesses, I mean, there's the owner and then employees. The owner's working in the industry, working in the business. So culture starts with them and how the owner or upper management interacts with employees on a daily basis, or interacts with customers or consumers. The employees are going to mimic that. They're going to, if somebody's constantly motivating in an upbeat mood around them, that's like their supervisor, you're going to follow in those footsteps to an extent. So like management and owners need to be, heading this charge of
top
culture.
down.
They need to definitely be always on the
They set the tone.
Yep. They need to be on their feet, on their toes.
On their feet.
So, because if they're not, and it's not fair even to an extent in some kind of cases, because it's like you can't have a bad day as a manager or as an owner, because then it's going to just ripple effect down. So, you got to deal with it, but that's what you signed up for.
Yeah.
So, what would be another tip?
So Kim and Brian touched on this, and once again, if you didn't see it, go watch it. They talked. So their benefit or reward program is a lot different than most agencies, right?
Yep.
They reward for more than just dollars collected.
Yes.
They reward for people who generate the least amount of complaints. They reward for people who are the most compliant. They don't just have, it's like number of phone calls made. It's not just like strict, like you collected the most money.
Right, because if you're only rewarding people who collect or bring in the most dollars at the end of the day,
you're going to create that culture.
Yes, you're going to have this aggressive,
I need to do
money.
whatever it takes to collect that money.
And it's funny, this is something then that I didn't bring up in that last video when they were talking about this, but the CFPB actually looks for that in the bonus structure of an agency.
Package.
When they're auditing agencies, they look at the bonus structure and they want to see agencies that don't reward only for dollars collected.
Yeah. They
want to see rewarding for no complaints, rewarding for compliance, rewarding for saying the mini Miranda every single phone call, rewarding for things like that. So, and if you don't believe us, we will link that article below of the CFPB talking about that. So yeah, check that out. But yeah, rewarding for other things than dollars brought in.
Yep.
So I think that's another top tip. Another top tip. Another one that I think is important is just overall like disciplinary action. I think it's common for inexperienced and smaller businesses to just go in with like this iron fist and be ruthless to employees, just because maybe they say, "Oh, I would have never done that. I would do this as an employee." Blah 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 blah. And then they go in.
Yeah, ruling by fear is not the way you want to do it.
Yeah, I don't think it is, at least. And people just, if you do that, you're just yelling. If you just yell, like if you just go into the middle of the floor and scream at somebody,
berate somebody who does something wrong.
That just, the whole entire atmosphere of the office now goes like, they just like everyone shrinks up and it's like, I don't want to
I don't want to deal with
I'm
that.
never going to approach them. I don't want to I don't want to work for them. And blah, blah, so
remember that the guy in North Carolina?
Which one?
How he starts each day.
Yes, yeah. At the North Carolina event we went to last year, they talked, one of the seminars, whatever you want to call it, was on this topic pretty much. And every day the owner, this goes with the top down, I guess, one. Every day the owner of the company walks around, shakes people's hands, hey, how you doing?
Always in a good mood.
He knows everyone first name. It's a big agency, so it's
huge.
Hundreds of people. So knowing everybody, showing that you care, talking about things, being involved, how just little things like Kim said last week, making eye contact, saying, hey, how's your kids, stuff like that. And a big agency means a lot, probably.
Yeah.
Definitely improves the culture. So, but back to like the discipline thing, I think being more constructive criticism is better to create a positive culture, because again, however you treat your employees, I think is how the employees
address it as a way this is how we get better.
Yeah.
Because here's how you suck.
Exactly, because it's like the same thing with if you don't treat your employees that way, the employees aren't going to do that with the consumers.
Yep. They're
going to yell at the consumer to pay their bill rather than say, this is the problem.
And you're likely to make an employee mad.
Right.
And what do you think is going to happen when that employee gets a phone call and they're angry, they're mad, you've driven them crazy to the point where they're just so mad at you and they want their revenge.
Right.
What do you think is going to happen when they answer the phone?
They're going to be mad and angry with the consumer and probably get a complaint. Because at the end of the day, I think if you have a good experience with the consumer, you know, you're less likely to complain overall if they're not like feel insulted or degraded or anything like that. So, yeah. But most importantly, I think so those are our tips right there. We have get rid of bad apples. Discipline, doing it the proper way.
Yep, rewarding benefits.
Yeah, rewarding things other than just money brought in. And then culture starts from the top down. Ownership you can't have a bad day.
And watch Debt Collection 101.
And watch Debt Collection 101.
That'll definitely help with your company culture.
But we want to hear what you do, because I'm sure there's no like, these are the 5 tips to have a great culture. These are the only
things you can do. You can't do anything else.
I think it's the best thing to do is to take in everything that you can. So we want to hear from everybody watching what you do to improve culture at your agency. Leave comments below. Send us an email.
We do read them.
Yes, we do. We reply to all of them. There's like 3, so it's not hard.
Yeah, we reply to all 3 of them.
Yeah, on YouTube, but on Facebook, if you're watching this on Facebook, comment there. If it's on YouTube, comment there. LinkedIn, comment there. And we would love to hear your feedback and what you do to improve your culture at your agency.
Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.
See ya.